Welcome to the Everton Byline. It's episode number 58. I am Matt Jones. Joining me as ever is Paddy Boyland. We are slap bang in the middle, Paddy, of an international break. How are you finding this little fortnight spell without the Blues? Are you missing them? I think a lot of people at the weekend were thinking, wouldn't mind watching Jack Grealish play some footy. It's a peculiar feeling for Blues at this time of the year, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm conflicted, and I'm probably more conflicted than most Everton fans right now, because international break for me means weekend off, a full weekend off, which is obviously a rare and wonderful thing in this job. So I've got a vested interest in international breaks. Try and forget about the football for a week or two. But this one does feel slightly different in the sense that normally, or certainly in the last few years, Everton have gone into international breaks in pretty dire form, and have just been looking forward to forgetting about them for 2 weeks. I think now there's a lot more optimism and a lot more sense of momentum around the club. And you probably would have wanted the games against Villa and Wolves in the Cup to follow immediately on from what they did away at Wolves, given that momentum. So I mean that's an interesting dynamic, but no, it's nice to have 2 weeks to kind of sit on all things Everton, to reflect back on those wins, and actually to kind of look forward to the games ahead. It is a rare feeling, but it's nice that it's that way.
Yeah, I think the lads on Blue Monday were talking about it. It's a potential beat Villa go top situation again on Saturday after all these years. But yeah, we won't delve too much into that. We'll start off with our usual housekeeping. If you watch us on YouTube, you see the logo of the Bridewell there in the bottom left-hand corner. They are sponsors for this show. Do get down there if you get a chance this week, or certainly before the game on Saturday, potentially, or the Derby as well, of course. Always great on a match day. Paddy, I believe you were at the other member of the Denby Bridewell family on Saturday, the Pen Factory, and you had a lovely time.
Yeah. So like I was saying, a rare weekend off for me. So made the most of it. We had a family do in the Pen Factory on Saturday, which was lovely. A great venue for it. The weather was nice, so loads of people out in the beer garden. Obviously, it was good to be able to just sit there and have an afternoon off, not thinking about the football. So yeah, highly recommend.
There you go. Any of the free places are great to go and have a drink in town. If you are watching us on YouTube, do hit like, do hit subscribe. Do leave us a comment on anything we're discussing today. And if you listen to us on iTunes or on Spotify, do leave us a rating, do leave us a review on either, or leave us a comment as well on Spotify, as a lot more people are starting to do on the shows as well. If you'd like to get in touch with us about anything, as a lot of people have done this week, it's evertonbyline@gmail.com for any more longer form correspondence, perhaps. But cheers to people who have got in touch with questions this week. We will be finishing with those questions and a few more from social media this week. We'll also talk about potential new contracts for Jordan Pickford, James Garner, Vitalii Mykolenko, James Tarkowski. A lot of players potentially coming up for renewals. But only one place to start really this week, Paddy. On Sunday at Anfield, Everton women started the WSL season in pretty spectacular fashion, it's got to be said. Went down a goal early on. And to be honest, outplayed for large spells of that first half, but somehow ended up getting 2-1 ahead at half-time. And then in the second half, they ran away with it. They won 4-1. And the star of the show, undoubtedly, was Ornella Vignola, who scored a hat-trick on her debut for Everton against Liverpool at Anfield. I mean, it doesn't get better. And the goals, I know one of them was deflected, wasn't it? But
yeah,
the first and second in particular were outstanding goals. And I think Brian Sorensen joked, didn't he, at the Goodison farewell, that they've already made Anfield the training pitch. And when they go and do stuff like that, it's you can see why he's got so much confidence in what he has to say. But obviously an incredible display from the girls to get the season going, and for Ornella to come in and just hit the ground running like that is remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke earlier about the sense of this feel-good factor around the club. I don't think that's true on the women's side, of course, that they're gearing up to start the new season at Goodison. First game, obviously, this coming weekend. But what a way to begin the season. New signings making an impact. And it wasn't just Vignola, but Ruby Mace, the record signing, came on at half-time. and really helped settle things down in midfield. Maz Pacheco from fullback, 2 assists for her, both great deliveries into the box. So probably about, in terms of the result and the way it transpired, just about the perfect afternoon for them. It was funny. I tweeted at half-time, Everton were 2-1 up. And I said, like, it's mad that Everton are winning this game because they've been under the cosh for most of it. Vignola's first goal comes completely against the run of play. Even after that, Liverpool have a couple of chances. And I think by his own admission, the Everton manager, Brian Sorensen, wasn't happy with that first half. I think he made 3 changes at half-time and tweaked a bit the way they were playing, where they were directing their attacks, and he knew they needed to be stronger in kind of 50-50s and stuff. Second half performance definitely stepped it up a notch and kept Liverpool at arm's length from the point at which they went 3-4-1 up. You just felt the game's done now. The only thing now is how many goals they end up racking up and how embarrassing this gets for Liverpool. I mean, Brian Sorensen made those comments, the ones you referenced at the Goodison farewell, and my instant thought at the time was, you're going to end up with egg on your face here, mate, because at some point this record is going to turn. And hopefully it doesn't turn the next time you go to Anfield, because everyone's going to remember it. But to be fair, that's now, 6 wins out of 6 for Everton women at Anfield, an impeccable record. Only surprise was they actually conceded a goal this time, because they don't usually do that. But kind of huge credit to them. And I think the excitement that we're seeing on the men's side is also being mirrored on the women's side. And if anything, that process started even earlier. It was January where they first started to make signings. The Freaking Group first started to invest in the setup. We've seen it delayed by probably 6 months on the men's side because the big overhaul came in the summer window. But the women's team have loads of new signings of their own and really have squad depth now. They brought on a France international in the second half in Kelly Gago, a Nigeria international in Tony Payne, and a record signing, as I point out, in Ruby Mace. So really, really positive. It's going to be great to see them at Goodison Park, and I'd urge people to get down whenever they can, because it's a good team and they deserve support, I think.
Yeah, that's on this coming Sunday, isn't it? At 2:00, they play Tottenham in the home opener at Goodison. So a great chance to sort of have a full Everton weekend if you've got the time, isn't it, to go and watch the lads on Saturday and the girls on Sunday. You know, at 2 different venues. So yeah, we'll definitely recommend it. But I think you're right about the obviously the performance from Vignola was fantastic, and the overall team performance as well. But like, I did like that to see that from Sorensen, in the sense that it wasn't just, oh, we're ahead here, let's just see how it goes in the second half and try and just protect this lead and maybe capitalize on some more defensive mistakes or whatever like that. It was him being proactive, wasn't it? Sort of recognizing the as much as we all did, the scoreline did flatten him a little bit, and he was keen to get stuck into some of those tactical issues. And
it was probably an admission he got it wrong.
Yeah.
Like they started the game with, I would argue, a winger at fullback in a 4-4-2. Last season they didn't really play 4-4-2, but they also had a central midfielder in Hayashi out on the right wing, and that to me looked completely wrong. They were getting battered in the midfield and also struggling on both flanks of fullback, with Liverpool getting in behind regularly. So, I mean, you can be winning the game but not playing well. And I'd argue if they'd not made those changes then, Liverpool probably would have gone on to get back into it. So yeah, you can get it wrong. I think the big test is how quickly you adapt in game, and it was good to see it happen as early as it did. I think actually, to be fair to him, it didn't just happen at half time. He did it probably about 30 in by tweaking a couple of positions. Ladd went to right back and Robinson went higher up the pitch. So I mean, that's a sign of a good coach. You're not always going to get it right from the outset, but you need to adapt. And I suppose that's one of the things we've maybe looked at with some Everton managers recently and questions like how flexible are they in game? Can they make those changes and so on? So fair play to them.
Yeah, and obviously Vignola is the first Everton player, male or female, to score a hat-trick against Liverpool since Dixie Dean, which is a brilliant and depressing stat in equal measure, given that no one's done it since. But just before we moved on, it got me thinking, Paddy, obviously, that will go up there. Certainly is one of the best ever individual performances from an Everton player on Sunday. Is there one or two performances you can remember from an Everton individual that stand out above anybody else as maybe one of the best you've seen?
A debut or just in general?
Just in general.
I think there was some of the games, and this is completely off the top of my head because you have caught me on the hop here. Some of the games where they probably under Ronald Koeman, where Lukaku was in his really rich vein of goal scoring form, where you would head to Goodison knowing that the team would swat the opposition to one side, score loads of goals, and he would be at the heart of it. I mean, he always seemed to do it against Bournemouth. Was it 4 in one game against Bournemouth? There was that FA Cup game against Chelsea where they win 2-0, and he scores an amazing solo goal, scores both goals. But I also think, and we probably referenced this a few weeks ago on the show, that Marouane Fellaini performance, first game of the season against Manchester United, is right up there for me. So loads of good individual performances over the years. Steve Watson scoring 4 against Leeds United, all from different places, different corners. They're the ones that immediately spring to mind, Matt. I mean, I don't know about you.
Yeah, so I think for me, I'd say there's two that sort of like from similar era. Like one is just Baines at West Ham, and it's probably mainly just the 2 free kicks. But like that, just to be able to produce that is remarkable. But you're right about Rom, and I always remember one the season before when we played against Stoke and we lost 4-3. I think it was on Boxing Day, or it was certainly between that spell. So no, it wasn't Boxing Day because we beat Newcastle 1-0 on Boxing Day and Cleverly scored that year. It was a bit later, and Lukaku was absolutely incredible against Stoke. He scored 2, set 1 up, and we still lost 4-3. But at that point, he was just, like you said, he was just so good and head and shoulders above everybody. But hard to top what happened on Sunday for individual displays.
I've got another one. This is probably underrated, but Everton in 98-99, so the Kevin Campbell season, he obviously saves Everton effectively with his goals. But if you go back and watch, I think it's Everton 6, West Ham 0, and how good Thomas Gravesen is that day.
Yeah.
Gravesen just had there were games where he would just run absolutely everything. And obviously he goes on to play for Real Madrid, so he's a good player in his own right. But that's another one that's up there for me with just great Everton displays that I've seen in the flesh. They've obviously been few and far between in recent seasons. Maybe some of Jordan Pickford's in the certainly in the seasons they stayed up. That one against Chelsea, it's probably about as good as you get. The one away at Leicester, where he saves the penalty from James Maddison, the all-round performance there. So yeah, there's quite a few to pick from. I'd be interested to hear. It's one of those where I'd be interested to hear get people's thoughts in the comments and on social media as to kind of stand at Everton displays. But I think it's a really good discussion point.
Definitely. And a beautiful segue actually from you, Paddy, from talking about Jordan Pickford and his importance into the next part of the show, because Jordan is very much the main crux of it. And reports coming out over the weekend, or certainly before the weekend, that Everton looking to tie Pickford down to a new long-term deal. By all accounts, he is very much keen to do exactly the same. And we'll come on to talk about some of the other lads who are kind of up for renewal at the end of the season a bit later. Obviously, Jordan's in a slightly different situation, but it's maybe similar to the brand for you on, Paddy, in the sense that this is just a really important player, and the new ownership are moving very quickly to get him tied down. And seen a lot of things over the weekend talking about this, saying Everton are hoping to secure him for his peak years, and it's still mad to think of it like that, because he's been on the scene for so long now, hasn't he? Obviously came through so young at Sunderland and signed for Everton. It's pretty early days of his career, but one of those things that if it did happen, there would not be an Evertonian surely out there who had a bad word to say about it. And in regards to people who deserve extensions, deserve to be earning good money for what they've done for Everton, he is very much at the top of that list.
He is. I mean, we had a conversation about Jordan Pickford on an old version of this podcast, and I think the conclusion we came to was that if he wasn't the most important player for Everton in the Premier League era, he was certainly one of them. You can debate that until the cows come home. Duncan Ferguson, Kevin Campbell, various others. But his impact is really clear now. He loves being at Everton. Really settled, loves being at Everton. And I think the idea here is, first of all, he's got 2 years left on his current contract. So you don't really want it to tick down to 18 months, because then all of a sudden you get a bit of speculation around, do they need to sell him in the next 6 months to preserve his value? Are they going to be forced from a position of weakness to offer him a lot more money than maybe they would have had to do if they'd done it before? That kind of stuff. And also, if you're rewarding players in a new financial era, he's probably the most synonymous with the Everton side right now. This with the club, Pickford, Branthwaite, maybe Jack Grealish, obviously, as a lone player, even at this early stage. But he's one of the first ones you think about. So it makes sense from a whole load of angles, I would suggest. It would be a huge surprise if it didn't go ahead, if he didn't sign it. And the other idea here is that it ties him down not only through to his peak years, as you mentioned, but right until the end of his playing career, if that's what he wants and that's what the club wants. The contract is there and should see him through. He's already one of Everton's highest paid players. You can put him in the bracket with Jarrad Branthwaite, who obviously got much improved terms over summer. Jack Grealish, as a lone player, the highest earner at the club right now, as I understand it. Not a huge surprise given what he was on at Manchester City. But Pickford's already there, so it'll be another expensive outlay for Everton, but one they will feel is kind of worth it. And like you say, you'd be very surprised if any fan disagreed there.
Do you know, I think it's really interesting around Pickford, like sort of thinking about this today. Like, it's never really, like, since he's come here and he's obviously performed, bar maybe like a couple of years early on in those first 3 or 4 years, you'd say, or before that Anfield Derby, which kind of felt like the turning point for him, didn't it, which Everton won. Like, it's never felt, or I've never gone into a summer and had that feeling like we're going to lose this lad here. You know, he's one of our best players. He's been performing well to such a high standard for so long. And I think I had that with Lukaku. You know, I had it with John Stones to a degree earlier in his career. Even like Fellaini, when he was like performing really well, like it kind of just felt like, oh, you know, we know he's going to move on because he's just playing at such a high level.
Well, maybe any Everton outfield player that's made an impact over the last 10 years, even down to Branthwaite and Njai, you'd argue.
Yeah, but it's never happened with him, has it? Like,
No.
like as far as you know, has there ever been like a chance or like at any point in his Everton career where he's come close to leaving, or if a club has made it just like an actual serious attempt to try and get him out of Everton? Because it's not like, barring like maybe the odd line or so in like, you know, very, very lightly linked, you know, transfer stories and gossip columns. It felt like it's never really even got close up in a topic of discussion that he's going to leave the club.
Well, I've certainly not reported any. So if it's happened, certainly myself and other members of the media weren't made aware of it and still aren't. And sometimes these things trickle out after the event. I remember I wasn't an Everton reporter at the time, of course, but I remember hearing about bids for Leighton Baines a few years later on in his career from places like Bayern Munich and so on. We obviously all knew about the Manchester United interest in Baines and why that didn't happen. But I think with Pickford, there's 2 points to make. The first is one that I've already mentioned. It's that he's settled. He likes being at Everton. It's important for him to start games for the club so that he can be England's number one. So it would take a lot to dislodge him from the club, I'd argue. The second is that I would say there's a difference. There's a crucial distinction to make between the goalkeeping position and any other outfield position, in the sense that if you think about what the Champions League clubs do and the really elite clubs do, they are stockpiling in those outfield positions. They're stockpiling arguably 2, 3, 4 players of Champions League quality so they can compete year round, effectively as it is now. With goalkeepers, that doesn't really happen. And actually, with the exception of Manchester City, given they've just gone out and signed a very high-profile goalkeeper, I challenge most people to name, for the other Premier League clubs in European competition, I challenge you to name the number 2 goalkeeper. If you think about it, City's obvious, James Trafford, because they've just signed Donnarumma, but go through all the others, and it's actually more challenging than you'd think. And most of them are not kind of big household names or goalkeepers that would be easy number ones elsewhere. Certainly not of the standard of somebody like Jordan Pickford. And I think the point there is that you don't really need one. You can chop and change in other positions and you'll rotate in other positions, but it's very rare, apart from maybe in the lesser cup competitions, to rotate your keepers. And as far as I'm aware, goalkeepers know that. And somebody like Pickford will be acutely aware of that. So if he was ever going to move, he'd have needed assurances that he wasn't going to be stuck behind a David De Gea, for argument's sake, at Manchester United, or a Hugo Lloris at Tottenham, which was obviously one of the other links. It would have been for somewhere where he'd play week in, week out, and he wouldn't have to worry about his England place. And that's not actually easy to find. It's not easy to do. And because of what he's got at Everton, it's got to be a very attractive proposition to kind of move him away and persuade him otherwise. So that's not, to my knowledge, cropped up. I think maybe. Go on.
I was going to say, like, why do you think that is? Like, I take your point about goalkeeping. Like, obviously, this is all great for Everton, and it's brilliant that he's staying, and we all love him. But I sort of look at, like, in the last few years, you've got a situation there where Spurs have gone and signed a new goalkeeper, haven't they? They've obviously got Vicario, who they plucked from somewhere. He seems like he's all right. He's not amazing. Got a bit of a ricket in him every now and then. You've got United, who obviously spent huge money on Onana, who's being shipped out on loan to Turkey this week. He's been a disaster. You've got Chelsea, who have signed 10 players for each position, apart from a goalkeeper, any goalkeeper who's decent. It seems like they're sticking with Sanchez this season. Like, to me, like, it just feels like if Pickford went into any of those 3 clubs, he would elevate their goalkeeping position straight away and give them all a better chance of pushing for Europe or the Champions League or whatever their sort of goals are. And I don't know why, like, he's not even been mentioned. And again, like, this is good for us because he's one of our best players. He's been one of our most reliable. But I just don't know why, like, clubs have just sort of looked at him and thought, "No, we're not going to pursue this," because I think he is so talented. He's been playing at such a high level for a long time. As much as we can talk about the perception around Pickford, and we can talk about this narrative, he's been good for England, but not for Everton. You'd think that people who follow football and, like, do scouting and do the research would kind of know, like, that is largely bollocks, to speak frankly, isn't it? Like, I just find it a bit strange that, like, none of them have gone near him at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point, and I do wonder if there's a difference between perception and reality. It's almost as though we're maybe the national dialogue is maybe 3 or 4 years behind the actual reality of what's happening at Everton. I mean, even now, you'll still see comments or articles about how he's better for England than he is for Everton and so on. I mean, I find those utterly bizarre because you can't be watching Everton then. And maybe that's it. Maybe people have gone, I'll see match of the day highlights and I'll only really pay attention if he's made a great save or an absolute ricket in a game because that's what I'm watching on match of the day. And otherwise I'll try to avoid Everton because it's Sean Dyche's Everton and it's tedious. I mean, that's one of the only things I can think. The other is that there would have been because he's England's number 1 and because of the status of him, it would have taken a lot of money to get him out. And that money, you need to give him assurances as well that he's going to be the number 1. So, I mean, he's settled in the Northwest. It would have taken a lot for him to jump ship. And maybe clubs have tried. Certainly Tottenham did with somebody like Vicario. They tried to go down a bit more of a budget route. its importance to Everton over the last few years, certainly before now, is almost beyond what you'd expect any other club is willing to pay. I mean, where would Everton have been without him? And what would that price tag have been to persuade Everton to part ways with somebody who effectively has helped keep them in the division over the last few years? So there's quite a bit that goes into it. I find it perplexing that certainly Manchester United didn't move for him and go really big on him after De Gea, as they were looking to phase out De Gea. Sometimes from some quarters, maybe even from Thomas Tuchel at times, you do kind of get a sense that his lack of European football on a day-to-day basis is held against him. You also feel as though that sometimes trying to push a narrative that others are better with their feet and better stylistic fits, certainly in the case of somebody like James Trafford with England. Ultimately, I think Pickford is just a better goalkeeper in all round in most ways than people like that. And I find the argument about his number one position a bit bizarre and almost disingenuous at times. But I think that all kind of maybe comes into the melting pot. And I'm very pleased Manchester United didn't go big on him after De Gea. He's still an Everton player, and he's very happy as an Everton player.
Yeah, well, maybe that's it. Maybe like there might have been polite inquiries to use a cricket terminology there, about his availability down the years, and because Everton value him so highly because he's so settled, it's kind of been a non-starter. But I'm sure Everton would have, even if they were more significant approaches for him or offers, I'm sure Everton would have done everything possible to keep hold of him. Don't get me wrong, but I just find it curious that we've not had any Pickford transfer sagas at all. And when he started being really good for a bit, I was, perhaps we should have expected a few more. But listen, he's here. He's going to be here for a bit longer, which is great news. For any listeners out there who think I'm trying to sell him, I'm not. I'm just trying to find a different angle to this contract discussion point. There's three others. Paddy has mentioned there: Tarkowski, Garner, and Mykolenko, all of whom are out of contract as it stands at the end of the season. Looks like Everton are trying to get those tied down as well. I think Garner, Mykolenko, no surprise there, players who are still relatively young in their careers, have been pretty decent players for Everton over the past couple of years. Tarkowski one, obviously interesting. Obviously, he's becoming a bit of a talking point at the moment with his, up and down start to the season. I think it's fair to say he's had a few injury issues as well. Not say getting old because he's still in his early 30s. Someone who's very much in the mid to late 30s now, sat here. But yeah, I think that's probably the most interesting one out of that, isn't it? They're trying to look to tie Tarkowski down. The other two feel like it was always going to come to the point where they're going to try and give them new deals.
Yeah, I mean, probably important to clarify for now that my understanding is that while Everton have resolved to offer Pickford a new deal and have effectively already voiced that to him and his camp, I'm not aware, certainly with some of the others, that it's got that far. They had, under the previous regime, so that's Kevin Thelwell, they had spoken to Mykolenko, Garner, and McNeil, my understanding, about potential new contracts. McNeil's got 2 years left now. The other two have got one.
Sorry, just to clarify, is that James Garner they'd spoken to? Not
James Garner.
Right, yeah.
James Garner. I mean, that's a trap we fall into quite a lot. But I'll call him Garner, and I'll call the other one Gay, just because it's easier. Otherwise, we'll all get confused. So yeah, James Garner. Obviously, the change in regime meant that some of those things some of those processes were discontinued because new people came in through the door. On Garner and Mykolenko, certainly James Garner has there's a club option there in his contract should he meet a certain threshold of games to be extended by a further year. But there's a benefit in tying these guys down, not only because I think they're good, at the very least, good squad players and players that you should keep around, but also if you extend again, you lower their book value in a PSR sense. So that's a lower amortization cost in your books. It means you're paying less, means that you've got a bit more wiggle room financially. So that's why, in theory, you would do it. It would eat into that. Tarkowski is the one that I look at, and I'm slightly confused about, because I know Moyes has seen the strength of the team over the past 6-12 months, certainly up to now, as being Pickford, Tarkowski, Branthwaite, maybe with a bit of O'Brien and Mykolenko, Idrissa Gueye just in front. But that kind of triangle from goalkeeper through to the two centre-backs has been, certainly in Moyes' opinion, the foundation for a lot of Everton's success, in quotation marks, over the last 6 to 12 months. Don't think anybody would argue with that. Where it gets interesting is that Tarkowski is now at an age where I suppose Everton will have to weigh up whether they want to offer him another long-term deal. And I suppose there's a question mark there. And then what happens if they don't? Let's see. I think they should, and I'm pretty sure they will at least try to tie him down to a new contract. But what I'm saying is he's older than Garner and Mykolenko, and therefore there's a bit more debate to be had around how long they should offer him. And I think we've already seen that. I mean, look at the Idrissa Gueye process over the summer. That was not particularly straightforward in terms of when things happened and when it was all wrapped up. There was a bit of back and forth over, is it 2 years? Is it 1 plus an option? And we always said 1 plus an option looked like it was going to be the solution there. With some of the others, Decore, I know that not only were they far apart in terms of money, but that was also about contract length, because he was into his 30s. Calvert-Lewin wanted a longer term deal than Everton were willing to offer. So these are reasons why maybe it's a little bit less straightforward with Tarkowski than the others. But it still seems like one, given his importance still within the team, still feels like one that they should try and get done, and I'm sure will try and get done over time. And it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Yeah, loads of work to do. I mean, certainly James Garner at the start of the season, will be totally understandable. He sort of accelerated any talks with him. Although, like you said, there is that year there as well, which is good for the club.
Did you see Moyes' comments, by the way, after
No.
So there was some quotes that came out middle of last week, but they were from the Molineux post-match debrief, and he spoke to the club's in-house media channel, and Moyes said he's playing as well as just about any midfielder in the country right now, and I hope that's recognised. And I think you can interpret the hope that's recognised in one of two ways. Does he mean internationally with England? That's probably a step too far right now. I mean, given the options at England's disposal. But the other one is, I hope that's recognised, and I hope we put a new deal in front of him and we tie him down to fresh terms, which I think is what most people will go for now that they've seen pieces from myself and various other journalists who are aware of the situation. So yeah, probably just keen to stress again that I don't think, whereas I reported that Everton are about to offer Pickford a new deal, that should come soon. I think my language on that was they're assessing those situations, are going to try and move forward on those situations soon. So we'll see how that transpires.
Good stuff. We'll quickly rattle through some questions before we finish today, Paddy. We've had a lot of questions about the Man City outcome today and resolution with the Premier League, but it's broke just before we started recording, so we've not really had a chance to look at that and do much reading around that. So maybe something we can discuss next week in a bit more detail when we've had a little look. But Everton have smashed Aston Villa, and I'm sure people want us to talk about the football side of things again, no doubt. But one for another time, essentially, when we've got a bit more chance to read around it. We've had loads of questions in on X, on Blue Sky, and on emails as well. I'll start off with this one, Paddy, just because it's carrying on from the theme of contracts we've discussed. It's from Sean Williamson on Blue Sky. He said, has there been an explanation regarding the length of contracts some of the new signings have been given? Alcaraz has only got 2 years with an option, ? Barry and Dibblin 4 years. Seems to be against the trend of much longer contracts handed out by other clubs. I think it's something we've sort of touched upon a bit, isn't it, over the summer, certainly around Alcaraz. And I think we we established he does have an extra year option there. But it is a theme, this, isn't it? With these players coming in, and like certainly with the younger players, you tend to just expect 5 years, but a lot of them have got 4, and you might be able to enlighten me on this, but in regards to amortization and PSR, obviously if it's a longer contract, it's less on your wage bill each year, and it goes less towards your PSR calculation. So I don't know, I'm sort of scratching my head a little bit as to regards to why you've gone down this route with this. Can you provide any insight to it?
Yeah, so certainly in answer to the question, there's not been a public explanation. A public explanation would be very interesting, but that's, I would guess, highly unlikely. It's not been much of a private one either. Certainly, you've not seen one from myself or other journalists yet, really. Outside of the Alcaraz situation, I mean, we know that certainly Moyes was weighing up whether to actually sign Alcaraz, and I think he just did it because he did well enough, and he was at that price. 12.5 million was going to be a decent bet. My theory on this, based on the information I have had, is that players are kind of bracketed, and I mean really informally here, are kind of bracketed in a number of ways. So with somebody like Alcaraz, he doesn't get a long-term deal. There's a bit of an uncertainty about how his Everton career is going to pan out, and they don't want to have a player potentially not contributing for a long period of time on the logic would be on wages and on a longer deal. With somebody like Dibbling, I suppose you could say, because of his age and how young he is, you don't know how he is going to develop, and therefore it's 4 years as opposed to, say, 5, or, I mean, probably not much beyond 5, but you can't actually officially do that, can you? The Premier League have cut off that option based on how Chelsea kind of gamed the system. Need to be careful what I say there. Gamed the system for PSR purposes. And then you've got others. So Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, if I remember rightly, does have a 5-year deal.
Yeah, he's 5 years, yeah.
Which logically seems like probably the wrong way around compared to some of the younger players who you would normally give longer term deals to. But I think they know what they've got with Dewsbury Hall, and that's a case of we believe in this guy through to the age of 31, which is what he'll be when his deal expires. And we feel that is an investment we want to make in a player that we believe in. And I think that's the big difference. Doesn't make it right. I'm sure people will question why Alcaraz isn't longer. It's 2+1 with the club option. Why Dibbling is not 5 years as opposed to 4. I don't particularly have a big problem with the Dibbling one. I think the Alcaraz one is quite short, actually. I'd have probably been looking at 3+1 for him, or even 4. And then the Dewsbury Hall one for me, if I'm doing it, I'd probably go 4 or 3+1, maybe. But what I don't know is how insistent Dewsbury Hall and his people were on that being a long-term deal, and that being a decisive factor in choosing to move to Everton. We know Moyes was pretty compelling in talks with a lot of these guys, Dewsbury Hall, Grealish, Barry. But there's obviously a financial element here, and kind of certainly a contractual element too. So, I mean, that's my attempt at kind of unpacking it all based on the tidbits I've had so far.
Yeah, like that would make sense. Like Dewsbury Hall, probably of all the signs we made this summer, is the biggest known quantity, isn't he? Like
Yes.
even like more so than Grealish to an extent. So yeah, that would make sense. But I suppose like you're just in a situation then where, like, say Dibbling has a bit of a in and out season this year, as a breakthrough year next year, then all of a sudden he's only got 2 years left, and when he gets to 2 years, you're already thinking about the next year, aren't you? And the value decreasing and all that sort of thing. So
if for argument's sake, if he has a good 6 months at the start of next season, and he's got 2.5 years left on his deal, within that 6 months, there's already enough body of evidence where you go, we're going to do this, and we'll sign him up again. It might not actually be on the kind of favourable terms you want as a club, but maybe that's a gamble they're willing to take in this regard. But I think it's fascinating. I think it's a really good question. It's one of those things where I know Kevin Thelwell did his kind of sit downs, didn't he? After with club channels always at the end of transfer windows, and he's already done one with Rangers. I saw the other day, but that's probably one of those where if you're in the room and you're able to ask a question, that's one of the things you probably would ask, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's I'm sure we'll get an explanation at some point, but yeah, it's one of those things throughout the summer I did find quite interesting.
Yeah.
Let's delve into some ones we had through on email. So this one's from Stuart Donnelly. So this is the Byline podcast and enjoyed the insight into the transfer wranglings. He said, one thing that came to mind when Paddy mentioned the Brazilian right-back Wesley going to Roma was, where do we stand on transfer deals with the Freaking Group? Are Everton and Roma completely separate? Does one take priority? Are we interlinked, i.e. could someone like Harrison Armstrong have gone on loan to Roma? Just wondered if you knew any more about that and how it could potentially play out in the future.
Yes, I mean, so there's a couple of things there. The first is, yes, of course, you could send Harrison Armstrong to Roma. You could try and sell a fringe player. You could try and send Dwight McNeil there for 40 million. Obviously, there's the associated parties rule, and all of those deals are based on fair market value. They need to pass that test, that threshold. So you still need to be careful in that sense. Entirely separate is interesting. I would say separate enough based on what I've seen and what I've heard so far. What I mean by that is the two clubs are run independently. You have different board of directors in the main, mostly different personnel, different managers, different directors of football, some multi-club operations, as we've seen before. Certainly 777, when they were looking to buy Everton, they had a group director of football that all the directors of football reported into. So you had like Kevin Thelwell, in theory, would have had to report into Johannes Spores, who's now at Southampton, I believe. The Freaking Group don't have that, and they want to run the clubs autonomously where possible. Where it gets really interesting is that they have the same owner, and at the end of the day, Angus Kinnear and David Moyes, when they go for somebody like, let's say, Wesley, to use the example in the question, where it gets really interesting is they would have to push that up to the Freaking Group to sanction. They are the ones that sign off on these things. But if you got Roma, Kinnear and Moyes' kind of opposite numbers at Roma, their counterparts doing the same. Are the Freaking Group going to want, and I'm talking in hypothetical terms here, are they going to want a situation whereby two of their clubs are effectively bidding against each other on a player and pushing the price up for somebody? Now, I don't think they will, personally. Everton certainly made a move for Wesley in January. Flamenco did not want to sell. I believe the valuation was very, very high at the time because they wanted to keep him for the Club World Cup, ideally. But I think Everton prioritised other players and other positions more so in the summer, and that meant that Wesley went to Roma. I'm a little bit disappointed, to be fair, because he would have been a really interesting addition. He started for Brazil the other night, and looks a fantastic attacking right back with the potential to play on the wing as well. So I think we'll have to wait and see how this turns out. But certainly, the clubs are separate and they operate in very different ways. But there's enough of a hierarchy right at the top with Dan Freakin and Ryan Freakin and Dave Beeston, who runs the sports portfolio, that I think they will want to avoid situations where there are conflicts. And obviously with selling players to each other, they're going to have to make sure it passes the fair market value. So I wouldn't expect loads of dealings between the clubs either.
Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine what the phone call between Moyes and Gasperini might be like.
Arguing over, you can have Wesley if you win.
Yeah, arguing over a player. Based on those notes from Moyes in the Paquette here the other day, I think I'll be backing Moyes on over most people. To be fair, it does not seem to be someone you want to get into an argument with or annoy. But no, it was fascinating stuff. Very great question, that.
Yeah.
Julian. We've had, sorry, that was Stuart. This one's from Julian. He said, "Hi, Matt and Paddy. You said on this week's Byline that you might do a question and answer show for International Week. I just wondered, for those players not on international duty, how does the week's training differ during the international break? There's no game to prepare for tactically, after all, and so many players are away. Is it a bit like the last week of school, Paddy, when people used to be on holiday and you had half a class and watch videos, other lads just sat around the telly,
They
chilling out?
they put the VHS of
Yeah,
Gladiator into the big
get
old boxy
get the
television.
get the projector out, yeah, all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. Just old
Yeah.
Everton games, watching them over and over again.
You can tell you went to a smarter school than I did because there was no projector screens. It was a big boxy TV that weighed an absolute ton, and you had to kind of wheel in from the stock cupboard. Yeah, I mean, certainly with Dyche and now with Moyes, the players after the final game before the international break get kind of an extended period off. Some of them will go away. Obviously, off the top of my head, probably 7 or 8 Everton players on international duty as we speak. So that diminishes the numbers in the squad, not just, by the way, players in the first team, but also in the 21s as well. You've got like Braden Graham and Jack Patterson are with Northern Ireland under 21s. While I was waiting to come on here, I was watching Tyler Dibbling in Kazakhstan for England under 21s. Beto plays for Guinea-Bissau at 5 p.m. UK on Monday. So they're missing about seven or 8 seniors plus players from the age groups below that potentially would have supplemented the numbers during the international break. They get some time off. They will still do a lot of similar work. But what tends to happen is that the tactical side of things only comes into play this week and normally slightly later in the week as well, when everyone's back. So you can all prepare for what's to come against Aston Villa this Saturday. So there's lots of stuff to do. I was looking now, I think Senegal play tomorrow, and obviously we're interested in Senegal because they've got Idrissa Gueye and Iliman Ndiaye. They don't play until tomorrow. So it's actually, if you think about England, have got Serbia, I think, on Tuesday night as well, haven't they? So Pickford's away in Serbia. Got to get back from some of these places, and then they've got to recover and then be ready for Everton on Saturday. So it's a tight turnaround. Moyes likes the club having international players. He thinks that's important for those players. He thinks it's important for the club and the club's profile. But one of the drawbacks, I suppose, is that you get less time during an international break to work with those players.
I imagine it's one of them. Like, if you're a player who's not on international duty and you're at the training complex and you've got like all the coaches there and stuff, like that must surely be the time where you get to work on stuff that like you've been like you want to work on individually. Like, so say like I don't know, like say if you're a player, you're like, right, I need to really work on me corners, or I need to work on shooting weak foot or something like that. Like that would surely be the time to get some quality one-on-one work with one of the coaches that you might not necessarily get when the full squad's there. So as much as it might be a bit weird and a bit frustrating if they can't do any tactical work, like I imagine for that sort of thing, it's probably great for them. So
Yeah.
loads of stuff will be going on still, no doubt, regarding that. We'll do a couple more, Paddy. We'll do one more from emails, and then we'll do one more from Twitter as well, just to finish off. Jordan Collins, this one is from, he said, big fan of the Byline down here in Nashville, Tennessee. A quick question related to the past window in negotiations with Southampton. In Paddy's piece, he mentioned that Southampton wanted a hefty sell-on fee irrespective of profit for Tyler Dibbling. Is that normal, or is it a sell-on typically a percentage of the profit of a future sale? And second part, with it being reported there is still a sell-on clause in the agreement, did it end up being a percentage of profits or just a smaller percentage of total sale? Cheers, Jordan from Nashville. Did you get all that, Paddy?
Yeah. I mean, I will, as I'm answering the first part, probably forget knowing my memory. The second bit, I will try. So not normal now, I would say, for sell-on clauses to be irrespective of profit. Just about every Everton deal that I've reported on over the last 5 years or so has been a percentage of the profit. That is the normal way of doing things. So it was abnormal for Southampton to be requesting something else. I think that it wasn't the main reason, but it was one of a couple of reasons why talks stalled for that 3-week period we mentioned on previous shows between the two clubs for Dibbling. The second bit was about.
Can we repeat that bit?
It was about what changed effectively, wasn't it?
Did it end up being a percentage of profits or just a smaller percentage of total sale?
Yeah, so I think the sell-on clause, I've not reported a number, and maybe that speaks to our confidence in sourcing. Almost certainly always does on the Athletic. I've not reported a number, but I'm led to believe it's lower than what Southampton were originally after. And I don't think Everton were ever willing to entertain something that was irrespective of profit, because one of the reasons why you would sign somebody like Dibbling is that you've got an asset there who hopefully will be part of your first team for many years to come. But if you do need or want to sell, you take the bulk of the profits there. You're carrying the risk, aren't you, on the player? So why would Southampton get kind of more because you've developed him? I don't see them to develop them further, I should say. So yeah, hopefully that answers both parts of the question.
No, totally makes sense. And we'll finish off with this one from Tangled Up in Blues, who said, do you feel more removed from the game in the new press box compared to Goodison? It looks a good bit further away from the pitch. I mean, it is a lot further away from the pitch, isn't it? But you know, obviously, throughout the Premier League, you've got some press boxes like the new one at Hill Dickinson, which is up in the guards. You know, Chelsea is one which is right behind the dugout. Very different vantage points. But I mean, I suppose at Goodison, it was quite far away still, wasn't it, compared to a lot of even current Premier League teams?
Yeah, I mean, definitely in comparison to somewhere like Newcastle, where you are effectively right above the dugout. The top of my head, Brentford, you're pretty low down as well, not far above the dugouts there. Goodison was a step back, and now this is a step further back. I mean, I am literally on the back row of the West Stand. It's a different vantage point. I mean, where it has its benefits is that you're able to see really clearly kind of the tactical positioning and get a sense from that perspective. The Goodison one was different. I did really come to like the Goodison one, apart from the pillar slightly to my right that obscured corner kick takers. And you definitely felt like you were part of the atmosphere. Where I think Hill Dickinson does really well, though, is like, despite being further back, you still feel like you're part of the environment. You still feel like you're part of the atmosphere because the sound kind of bounces around and circulates and reverberates. So they've done a really good job acoustically. I would argue that it's good, nice mix. Most of my comments about the new stadium, certainly from a media perspective, would be very, very positive so far. Admittedly, we are still in the honeymoon period. I have not yet been drenched on the way back to Moorfield after a December Carabao Cup exit or against a lower league team or a disappointing home defeat to somebody else. Like, for now, we're in the honeymoon period, but yeah, pretty much everything positive so far in that sense.
Yeah, totally agree on that front. Obviously, more as a spectator, but cold, dark nights are coming. Hopefully, the lads can continue lighting the place up. Yeah, hopefully the lads can continue lighting the place up with the football they're playing. We'll wrap it up there anyway. Cheers to Paddy. Cheers to our sponsors, the Bridewell. Do make sure you get down there, or the Denby, or the Pen Factory on Saturday, either before or after the game. They'll all be great places to be. Hopefully, if Everton doing the business against Aston Villa as well. Do hit like, do hit subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Do leave us a rating, do leave us a review if you're listening to us on Apple or on Spotify. We've had Blue Monday out already this week with Dave and Les, if you want to check that out. We also had Pete Mack, who did a instant reaction from Everton's 4-1 win at Anfield on Sunday as well. So plenty going on already, and as the week goes on, we'll start building up to that game against Aston Villa in a little bit more detail. But yeah, that's been us on the Everton Byline. We'll be back again next week. Up the toffees. Speak to you soon.